Well, welcome to video number 2. This one, excuse me, a little bit poorly, that explains my wee voice. This one is about delegation, and I'm going to kick off by asking a couple of questions. 1, do you think delegation is more trouble than it's worth? And 2, do you feel like perhaps you're the only one who can do the work you do and therefore you can't delegate? If you answer either of those questions affirmatively, that is a yes, you are wrong. But the good news is you can overcome your fear of delegating and make it a way that it becomes an integral part of your kind of strategy, your business strategy, your work strategy, and not a kind of panic last resort. So in today's video, I'm going to give a few tips and strategies for delegating, and I really hope this helps. Here goes. 1, learn to let go. It's really hard to let go of your business. If it's a small business, you're used to bootstrapping, used to doing everything. You kind of grow up having learnt everything and developed everything, and you feel like it's probably impossible for anyone else to do that work, but this is not the case. So start low and start slow. Delegate small tasks, just with minimal skills required. Then you can move on. You become more comfortable with the concept of it. Very important this. Don't fall into the trap of doing something just because it's easy. So if it takes 20 minutes to explain a task that takes 30 seconds, it's still worth doing because over time that actually makes sense and your mind should be on bigger things. 2, break down your work. Of course, your work is made up of multiple bigger projects and all of their constituent parts. What you need to do is break these down in order to delegate it, and you'll find that actually what you can delegate is a lot more than you think. So even if you delegate 50% of a project and do 50% yourself, it's still a massive advantage in terms of freeing up your time. A couple of little tips on this. One is to list each individual step in a process. Let's say, for example, in getting a customer from a lead to a sale, if you break down every step and just write them down on a piece of paper, an Excel sheet, whatever. And you can then look at each individual element and think to yourself, well, maybe what elements of these can I outsource to someone else? So I can just sort of have, a pile for myself, a pile for the other person to do, a pile for your assistant to do. You can do a workflow, basically, sales flow, CRM flow, whatever it may be. A diagram that shows all these steps that, it makes actually the process of delegating things that much easier when you yourself have broken down what you do. Now, a little sort of addition, if you like, from doing this is that when you do that, it's quite often you find out some areas of your business that perhaps you can optimize yourself. So perhaps when you break down and make these lists, you see where you're wasting time. You see where you're doing something that you could do a little bit more efficiently. Are you getting someone to fill a form in here and then fill a form in there? And could this perhaps be sort of done earlier on? And those kind of minor little details which actually make a difference. Although not strictly related to the delegation, it's a little byproduct of this breaking down your work. 3, establishing priorities. Make sure you know the priorities of the task and be clear about this with the person to whom you're actually delegating stuff. Understand the time and effort that it requires to do them so that you can prioritize better and just make the delegation process that much more clear and structured and simple, I suppose. Grade the tasks as well by skill. This is something that's good for you. If you give them different skill categories, you can also work out what you can delegate all at the same time, perhaps what needs to wait a little bit, so that you're not just doing, delegating all the hardest things, perhaps that are the hardest things, let's say, to convey immediately, but you're sort of doing this in a scaled way. Define what is sort of really urgent versus what is important with due dates. And I'm sort of repeating myself here, but it's really important that on every task you delegate, you do actually outline this. And if something happens, and it always does in business and in any kind of walk of life, priorities change. Just be really kind of clear about that and say, this was the number 1 priority. Now this is changing to whatever. Don't just keep lumping another priority on top of another priority on top of another urgent priority, because it just sort of, it creates actually confusion. Along with establishing the priorities, I think, within that, I'd say really important is to delegate tasks with lower skills first and progress as the person to whom you're delegating everything also gets more experience. So the ones with lower skills first build up to a higher skill task, and so on and so forth. 4, always prepare clear instructions. This is pretty obvious, I'd say, but make sure you really clearly outline what is required. And it is one of the most common mistakes I see, and that is because everything is in your head and you know it and it's perfectly clear. But what you have to be able to do is explain it to someone. Even if it's straightforward, think about the fact if you're going to delegate something, think, I'm going to describe this as if I were describing it to my 6-year-old son or my friend's child or my 3-year-old niece. I don't know. Whatever works out. Describe it for your cat. Make it obvious. Make it clear. There's nothing wrong with stating the obvious. Explain how something must be done if the person has no experience of it. And then also think about allowing their input on it. But clearly identify the boundaries where the person's responsibility begins and where the authority kind of ends. Prepare clear do's and don'ts on this, for example. So do address clients this way, don't address them that way. And also, on this also, be really ready and willing to answer questions, okay? Answering questions is vital. If you delegate work to someone and you go into it expecting not to have any questions, you are getting it wrong, okay? You need to expect to have questions. Now, you don't want the same question 20 times, because then there's a problem. But you do want, if you can't remember the answer after asking 20 times, then it's time to move on. But you've got to expect questions from the person to whom you're delegating work. You've got to be ready to answer those questions. And the best way actually to avoid having a load of questions, because I know you want to delegate work because you don't want this back and forth which takes up so much time. So the best thing to do, define absolutely clearly, okay, how you want something done. Don't say you want the best. Say what you mean by the best. You want the tallest, the shortest, the fattest, the cheapest, the blackest, the whitest, whatever it may be. Define it clearly. And secondly, be ready and open to answer questions. 5, don't be scared of training. Along with preparing clear instructions, training is probably the best investment of your time that you can do when you're actually delegating. So, and I mean training, obviously, of the tasks you're going to delegate, but also working beyond that. Train as part of your delegation. There's nothing like the practical experience for the purposes of training. And the other thing when it comes to training, which is what I hinted to just before about it being wider than just the tasks, is teach the person to whom you're delegating about your business. Don't just explain a task. Explain how that task fits into the bigger picture. Talk to them about your business. Introduce what you do. Make them enthused about it. And the reasons are they will understand what they're doing much better. They will buy into it much more, and they'll feel a part of something, okay? And when someone is doing that, they're going to be more motivated, they're going to work better. Generally speaking, they will understand why they're being asked to do certain things. 6, I'm starting to regret doing this with my hands. Play to the strengths of the person to whom you're delegating. Find out what they're good at, okay? You have in mind what you want them to do, but there may actually be a bunch of other things that they also are particularly good at. They may have expertise in a certain area that you don't. Find out about that. Tease this out of them. Find out what they enjoy doing as well. Linked to this, I would say, playing to their strengths, be consistent in delegating similar tasks so they can actually build up strengths. And then when they get confidence and ability, you can start obviously introducing some more tasks. And also, going back to the training a little bit in this, look into the future, look to build up their strength. Find out what they would like to do, find out what they're interested in, where they would like to go. But these are all things that you can use to your advantage. Again, don't imagine that because you've got someone doing one thing, you must keep them doing that thing because you finally got it off your plate. Understand that they also need to grow and they can do more for you. 7. Trust and check. This is something I've sort of repeated quite a few times, but if you've established kind of clear timelines, and you trust the person to whom you've actually delegated work, then what you need to be doing is combining this delegation with regular checks. Regular checks doesn't mean micromanagement. It doesn't mean all the time being on top of them. What are you doing? Why have you done it like that? Let me see it now. No. What it means is just regularly checking in, communicating, and making sure that over the long term, decent results are done. Allow them to make mistakes. Oh, another thing on this as well, make sure that the person knows what to do in case of a problem. Focus on the results rather than focusing too closely on, let's say, how they're accomplished, and make sure that if there is a problem, the person to whom you're delegating knows what to do. Excuse me, who do they contact? I'm getting very excited. Who do they contact? How do they go about resolving this problem? You know, give them freedom with a safety net, essentially. So you trust them to do something and you check they're doing it okay. You trust and you check. You trust and you check. And finally, number 8. Provide feedback. This is going back a little bit to the trust and check, I suppose, but clear communication resolves most problems in the world, in my opinion. Never mind the workplace, probably in the world. So check before the task that everything is understood, check during it whether there are any issues, and then afterwards check obviously how it's being done, and provide feedback. Take the time to review the work that has been done for you. It's really important. Make that feedback also constructive, okay? Tell them how it could be done better. This bit's been done great. I think here this needs to be done. I have it more in mind to be done like this, and so on and so forth. So make sure you praise good work, okay? Because motivation is absolutely key to delegation, to successful delegation. I mean, it's key to getting anyone to work for you and to work for you happily, obviously. This process of providing feedback builds awareness and trust also from the person to whom you delegate. It signals that communication is important to you, and therefore the channel of communication is going to work both ways more productively if you are communicating. I think I just about got that out in the end. Right, those are 8 sort of tips. If you like this video, please subscribe. Please let me know your thoughts on the blog or in the comments. I'm happy to hear anything. Next week, I hope I'll be back to doing this weekly. I say back, I haven't done it weekly up till now, but it should be. And I think it'll be something on social media strategy. Until then, thank you very much. Bye.